Why Bruno S?
Yeah, I am very interested in sort of personalities that can embody um, like the evils of society and how maybe society somehow and like this way of that we have of living um, drive us into becoming these characters who are, quote unquote crazy. And I'm interested in that, and I'm interested in how these things happen and how some lives are more important than others. Um, Not because I believe in that, but because I really am interested in understanding why these things happen. And the life of this character was super interesting for me, and the fact that he then became somehow a movie star for Herzog movies also was very, yeah, a beautiful thing for me. And yeah, his life, then he moved to the USA and he lived like crazy crazy things, fall in love, and yeah, I'm just interested in that. Yeah.
Do you feel that the his life does that inform this latest project as well? Like you're saying, you think there's something that can be gained from being in contact with this marginalization? Is that
Mhm.
something that you've always seen in your music and your expression? And then you also looked at Bruno's life and felt that connection. Did that have an impact in this release, or is this more of a continuation of what of the work you've been doing?
I think both things what that you mentioned. On the one side, yeah, really like precisely his life informed this music because it kind of like also resonated with my own personal experience of moving to Europe and living in a German city and being in contact with Germanness, let's call it, um and on the other side also these marginalized people. Yes, it's something that is ongoing, like the marginalization of a certain group of people, not only like people who kind of like are neurodiverse, but also, I don't know, people of color or like South American people or queer people, all these kind of like little boxes that create these categories are interest me, not only because they exist, but also, yeah.
Did you feel a lot of culture shock, or guess what were your biggest challenges when you moved to Europe, like to where you are now?
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely a very, very, very big culture shock. Yes. And I moved here and I spent the first European winter in Germany, and that actually it's destroyed me. It was super intense, and I come from like a country that the coldest weather is really, really in the south, and I am more like in the middle, south. La Plata city in Buenos Aires province. So for a moment, like the weather was already like a big shock, and also yes, like how people relate to each other. That was super intense for me because of this thing that sometimes only the way people behave create marginalizations. You don't need to be like I'm not a, I don't have disabilities. I am neurotypical. Like I have a lot of things that are privileged, and yet I felt the marginalization. Just for the way people are treating each other. And that's for me something that is crucial. Like what kind of life are we building as a group of people, as society? And then the extreme point of Bruno S being like this person who is like neurodiverse, poor, son of a prostitute, a lot of things that he had given in his life create that marginalization was even bigger. So that kind of like represent for me like an extreme point, but for sure already my very privileged experience already made me feel this yeah, marginalizations from like a very simple course of actions of like what it is, how we behave toward each other on like an office, the U-Bahn, the metro stop, etc.
What would you say in the music scene? Were there big challenges for you?
Yeah, in the music scene, I think there still are challenges when it comes to like the European scene. It's there is something there that still for me it is a bit of a challenge. There is a point where like a cultural interest can become an exoticization, and this for me is very borderline in many places, like how curators, for example, invite African artists or like Asian artists or South American artists, and what kind of sound they are expecting to have when they invite certain artists, and how they showcase their diverse program, what music they think is South American, for example, and what qualifies for them as the sound of South America. And that for me is also it's a very fragile thing, and it's good that we understand this through the perspective of that people, let's say South American people making contemporary South American music without falling into exoticizations or like stereotypes. And I think this, even though I feel like Europe is like really open to present this diversity, but I think there's still a lot of like misunderstandings, and a very, I feel like there is still like a big um, conceptual maybe misunderstanding.
What were your intentions behind this release, and how do you feel about it?
Mhm. Um, so the intention for me was mainly to kind of like bring into sound this kind of like fast changings and like everything, like if you are like going on a train and you have in a new city, and then you have so many images coming from different places, and then the sound of like the stop of the train, and then the sound of like a phone. I wanted to have this kind of like idea of zapping that I kind of like that Sean Zorn kind of like brought together, but more like in a way like, okay, what zapping happens in my brain with my own baggage. So I wanted to kind of like have this idea of these fast changes, and have like all of a sudden this rhythm that for me is just like completely Brazilian, for example, and then going into something that maybe comes from like a place of like catharsis and go like pop, fast and loud and distorted, and then all of a sudden just bring a melody that is super soft and dreamy. Like I wanted to have this chaotic or like this cacophony that you mentioned. Um, and for me, even like because I do other things that for me are a bit more extreme or harsh, for me this release is not as harsh as other stuff that I've done. But it does, yeah, it does maybe touch a bit those corners. Yeah.
Can I ask you about your composition process? Because you're
Sure.
credited for one, two, and three, and I was curious to know how you go through it, and
Mhm.
then tell me how it works for the other two
Mhm.
pieces of the release to know like how is that collaboration between the three of you.
Yes. Yeah, normally everything that I write is very linked to the people I write to. Like it's hard for me to see myself as this kind of person who writes in their loneliness and for just an instrument. Normally it's a very collaborative process, like in the sense of like I know what they can play and I ask them to go a bit maybe a step further from how they sound, or even their own sound brings me the idea of like combining certain things. So there is a lot of like feeding each other, which I really appreciate. And so the process also of bringing these pieces together in the rehearsal room is also a process of like bringing ideas to improvise with them for a while, see how they sound, and then maybe put together a set list in which I say, "Oh, remember what we did then? Can we just have this, and sound and ambient? Can we bring it together and do like a 4-minute song?" And they completely understand what I say, and then we just go for that. And on the other hand, other processes of like more written music is very modular in a sense that I write concrete things in boxes. So we have these boxes, and then we play around with them. We see maybe we do like 3 times this one, then comes another one, and then we go back. So it's kind of like a puzzle or like a Lego tower that we built with these modules. And I find that super practical for rehearsal, and like it's kind of like a fast way of working with people, because it's kind of like a direct thing to bring for to the rehearsal room, but then also brings a lot of freedom for them to propose, and so they can feel part of that, and therefore they can, yeah, I feel like they can play the music as if it was their own. So it kind of creates this idea of belonging, which I also appreciate in groups, in ensembles or bands. So there is a lot of collaboration. There are very concrete ideas, and normally my aesthetic is also like a bit of is something that I really want that kind of remains. So there is an aesthetic, the sound aesthetic, or like also like an attitude brought to stage that I really like to take care of. Like even when it's harsh, or like when it's loud, or when it feels like a lot of is happening all the time and fast, I like to think that we are doing that with care, and that we kind of like have the respect for the audience. Like I think the audience is super important, and it's good that we always keep in mind that we need to take care of that space, because they come to the concert and it's a place where they are kind of like trusting us that we are not gonna hurt them, you know?
Maybe I would like to ask if this is something that you're thinking about doing again, grabbing a figure and kind of marrying it through music, trying to
Yes.
express their life through music.
Completely. You actually, yes, this is something that is very present. I wanted to actually do it now for this Portugal tour, but I didn't manage to find the time. But I actually thought, yes, I've been thinking about that, because there are so many other like interesting characters that are not necessarily artists, but I think that they devoted their lives to something, a political idea, or like yeah, or a cause. And for me, that's super inspiring. And I really would like to honor that by taking their lives and make it into something completely abstract. But yeah, there is this character from Argentina. It's called Norma Pla. She was a retiree, like a pension, like an old woman who she went to protests. Yeah, until she was like, I don't know, maybe 80 years old. And it's like a very important figure for like the movement of like retired people, and fighting for like, you know, for like a dignified life, and like, you know, a nice salary and access to medicaments. And I think that's so beautiful, and there are so many beautiful pictures and like snippets of like interviews or her videos of her on the street that are so yeah, for me, like it's so impactful, that image already, that yeah, I've been thinking about that actually. To do like another, yeah, a follow-up of Bruno S, but then maybe Norma Pla or another character, yes.
So the last question I wanted to do, because I don't want this to be super long,
Mhm.
is actually a bit about Argentina. Um, and funny enough, there's Doc Lisboa, the music festival happening here in Lisbon right now.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, I mean film festival. And there
Yes.
was an Argentinian film called The Night is Fading Away, La Noche está marchándose ya, which is based
Mhm.
on a song. But the movie talks about basically this cinema that is a public cinema that is being taken down from the state, and it's being turned into a private company thing. People don't even know what's going to happen to it, and
Yes.
the people of the cinema then decide to occupy it, against the government's decision. So I
Hmm.
want to talk about a bit about um, how is the how would you describe the cultural scene or the art scene or even the music scene? Like, is it very subculture, counterculture? Do you feel there's hope for your like Argentina politically? Like, how do you feel about all of this?
Yeah, it's a very hard thing at the moment. Yeah, it's darker as it can get at the moment, at least for people of my generation. Probably the people of the generation of our parents lived darker times because of the dictatorship. But what we are experiencing right now is a bit of a persecution of yeah, the queer people. For the queer people is a bit much more intense than I would say for the artists for sure. Um, but it's definitely it's like like empowerment, like when you make something poorer than that it is, in terms of like money, and support and finances. Um, but of course, I think this happens normally everywhere, that when you take something out from the people find their way to bring it back and stronger. So I think that that's something that happens and has been happening in Argentina forever. This idea of like, because there is no resources, people find a way, or they build and they make resources out of nothing. And they create something that is much more interesting because it has this urgency or has like a need. And I think that that makes, yeah, the culture or like the art or the result, yeah, much more interesting. And it talks about the place and it talks about its people, which I think is beautiful when you find that. Um, it's very hard to now to kind of like think about the future because it's so much day-to-day situation. And it's hard to know because there are like political figures of from the opposition that they have a bit of an intense direction, in the sense that they could take over in the future. But it's a bit hard to anticipate. And it's also hard to anticipate how certain laws that the president had passed, if they are gonna uh, finally take place or not. In the case of the cinema, it has been a very intense situation because the people from the industry have been fighting a lot with protests, and they make films accessible and for free and stuff, or like they make movies about that, like what you just said. So I think that's amazing because maybe it can be that the situation turns around. But at the same time, yeah, I don't know. I don't know because it's really hard to anticipate. Yes, it's hard to know at the moment. But yeah, what I said, no, like when there's no resources, I feel like it creates a sense of urgency. And when there is a sense of urgency, art has a much more strong impact. Like what people are doing has much, like the voice that they are putting out there, I feel like is so like it really goes directly to your emotional body, and that's amazing to see. Yeah.